you are doing wonderful. In this video, I'll try to explain you guys about cluster configuration and all the different hierarchy of it, breaking down into nodes, then cores, then executor, then partition, then tasks, and how these all are connected. So, mm, so if you give interviews, a lot of recruiter having demand on data bricks often asks whether you have knowledge about cluster configuration or not, whether shared clustered or dedicated cluster or things like that. So let us start. Let me first draw the hierarchy of it. So we'll inside we'll see some order like this. We'll start with nodes. Let me do one thing. I'll thin it a little bit. Let me start with node. Then we'll go to cores. Then we'll go to executor. After that, we'll go to partitions. I'll explain you shuffle and all those things. After this, we'll go to tasks. Okay guys, so let's start with cluster node. A cluster is actually multiple worker nodes and one driver node. So okay, let me try to explain you what is worker node and driver node. So a worker node can be explained as let me first explain you the driver node. You can think of driver node as the brain. So it is like a brain of Spark application. It actually also parse the code. Okay, it's create the DAG, which is directed acyclic graph. It requests from the cluster manager. For example, if the cluster manager is Yarn or Mesos or anything like that. It also, see, we have driver node and worker node, right? So the driver node distributes the tasks into worker node. So driver pictorial diagrams are better to understand, right? So driver node, let's say this is driver node. What it does, let's say T is for tasks, right? So it distribute all the tasks to worker nodes. So it's like a brain, right? It knows that these people have to work, but it's like a director. It will tell them that how what you need to work on, right? Something like that. So it gave it all to the worker nodes. So that is one representation of it, the driver node and worker node. So yeah, distributing tasks. Now let's try to understand worker node. So worker node is like a muscle or laborer of Spark cluster. Think of it like the actual work, the actual processing, the actual transformation on the data. This is where worker node come into picture. It actually runs the tasks given in the driver. It uses executor. uh, Executor can be said as Java virtual machine processing. It uses those executor to actually execute code and handle data, right? It also read and write data from different storage like HDSF, and also write them to there. These all things are done by worker node. Let me pictorially define you what all the things are done by worker node. So let's say we have worker node. So so the worker node will run the tasks. It will run the tasks. uh, Other than that, it will use executor to actually execute and handle data. Okay. We'll learn about executor later. Handle data. Other than that, it also uh, what can I say? It also read. Let's say it also read and write. It also read and write from different places like HDFS or S3 or some DB, whatever your DB is, database, etc. So this is what worker node is. So I hope it made sense. Let's try to give one analogy. Think of it like, imagine you are running a big construction project. So the driver is actually the manager. So imagine you are running a big construction. You are building Burj Khalifa. Okay. I don't think so Burj Khalifa is this ugly, but bear with me, guys. There has a lot large base. I know that. Okay. So Tom Cruise is here. Oh God, I deleted it. Anyway, it was not a tough diagram. So imagine you are building Burj Khalifa, and Tom Cruise is here somewhere doing his stunts. Now, imagine you are building Burj Khalifa, and the driver is actually the site manager. So think of driver as Tony Stark. Yeah, Tony Stark does his own work, but okay, think of today Tony is a manager, and the workers, the actual laborer doing the construction. So guys, to be honest, these are third world countries people. Not everybody from third world is a laborer, but some are. So these are humble, beautiful people who are maybe on the crane, on different cranes, doing some construction and all this. These are the workers, right? There's so many workers, right? But there's only one driver, and I don't know what Tom Cruise is doing, but yeah, he's using the solution. He's the client. Okay, I hope that is making sense. So now let's try to understand flow in the Spark. When we submit the Spark job, the driver receive it basically. Whenever you submit a Spark job, meaning let's say you run a transformation, it submits the Spark job, and the driver received it. The driver then break it down into stages and tasks depending on the shuffling. Those things I will define later. And then the cluster manager allocates it to worker nodes. And then worker nodes runs the executor execute tasks and send result back to the driver. So now let me draw a diagram. See what happens actually when we submit a Spark job. Okay, that's mean we do something like dot show, any kind of action is taken, right? Then a Spark job is submitted. So where, oh God, I clicked the wrong button. Actually, I developed this app on my own because I was not able to find anything free, and so yeah, it's a little not glitchy. I'm still have to get to used to it. Okay, so when you have a Spark job, right? when you have a Spark job, it is created when you run some kind of action like dot show or any other action. Okay, then this Spark job is received by our Tony Stark, which is driver node. And then once the driver node gets it, it break it down. See, the Tony Stark is good at breaking down, right? He breaks down a lot of cute girls. Anyway, so the driver node break it down into stages and tasks. So break it down into stages and tasks. Now, now that this is done, the cluster manager then allocate it to worker node. Now cluster manager comes in picture, which is some kind of code base Databricks has own. So it now allocates the driver nodes. This concept is not very clear to me, so I'll try to make it clear and I'm very sorry, I'll try to explain it in another video. Now the worker node, once the worker node uh, cluster manager allocates worker node, okay. Worker node, then the worker node runs on the executor. Later I will explain you how the memory and everything is also done. Now the executor, again let me try to explain you guys in more detail. So let's think of it as like Spark itself does not own machines, right? It asks cluster manager for resources. So for example, like cluster manager are yarn. Let me write it down. What are the cluster manager? Cluster manager. These are, we can say, these are, we can say, it can be standalone. I'll just write standalone here. I left the A. It can be standalone. It can be yarn. It can be Mesos, or it can be Kubernetes. Right, the microservices also involved. Now let's try to understand. Let's try to first understand what is cluster manager. So let me think. So cluster manager is like a traffic police. So what it does, it is like a traffic police. It do the store allocation of the whole Spark cluster, right? Basically, it allocate resources like CPU, memory, GPU, etc. to Spark jobs. I know there's a lot of terminology involved, so you will grasp it little by little, right? So let's leave it for now. I'll try to explain this all in a different video, and later down the line it all will make sense. Now let's understand about the worker node. Okay, let's understand about the worker nodes run execution. Okay, how the worker node runs the executors, right? How the worker run all the executor. So once a worker node is allocated, Spark launches one or more executor processes on it. Okay, so I hope you are getting it. So an executor is just an Java virtual machine, JVM, running on workers node. So let's try to understand it. X, oh god, my pen is not working. Executor. Executor. So it all are running on worker node. Okay, now let's try to understand another thing. It all are running on worker node. So executor are actually responsible for running tasks. Like smallest tasks can be defined here as a smallest unit of work in Spark. So let's say you have one, let's say you have 1,000 partitions. So 1,000 tasks. If one task take 1 minute, 1,000 tasks will take 1 minute also, because there's parallelism involved, right? If the parallelism is of 1,000. Okay. So executor is responsible for running tasks. Let me show you what all executor does. It is running tasks. It is also responsible for storing cache data in memory. So for example, like you use dot cache or dot persist, right? Storing cache data. It is also good for writing intermediate shuffle data, uh, like when the data is shuffled, right? When we do joins, group by, or things like that. So the executor is used for those things also. It writes those things into our memory. So this is about it. So each executor is long lived for the duration of your job, not just one task, right? I hope that makes sense. So think of executor as toolboxes given to each worker node by the driver. Okay. I think guys we already have explained a lot of things in this video. Later you will be able to grasp a lot of things. To be honest, a few things I'm also confused about. So later we'll all try to understand it in a better way. Thank you so much guys for staying tuned. Any kind of comments, any kind of improvement is all welcome. Thank you so much.